Welcome to Real Talk Food Safety with Jill and Tia. And today, our special guest, Kelly. Welcome, everyone, and welcome, Kelly.
Thanks, Jill. Appreciate you having me here today.
We're super excited to have you here. And pretty soon, our audience is going to hear why, but I'll just share a little bit now. Right. We've known each other a few years, and every time we connect, one, I'm always impressed with you. Just as a human, you are so kind and insightful and like a sage. But yeah, and
Thank you.
total and very fun because we've had some fun experiences.
hmm
But even as we've been doing that, the way that you talk about leadership and your organization is so unique. And I think it's going to be a great experience for our audience to hear about one that there are actual places where food safety culture, like we say that term, but the culture around in the organization supports food safety and looks different and doesn't always have to be a struggle. So,
Yes. Yes.
so we're excited to have you on with us today to talk a little bit about all those
Yes.
things.
Thank you.
Yes. And when we get started, even though we aren't able to directly hear from our audience, we love when they comment. So if you are joining us, we would love to have you drop in and say hello, maybe where you're joining us from. And even if you're on the replay, we love when you drop a comment and share with us what's it like in your world over there today. So certainly feel free to do that. And Kelly, you're on the East Coast and I'm here in the Midwest, right?
That's correct. Yes. Pennsylvania.
How are you? How are things in Pennsylvania today?
Well, today is a little bit better than the last couple of days. We've had some pretty difficult storms here the last several
Oh,
days. And so I think maybe a little bit on the other side of it, looking for some sunshine maybe today or tomorrow.
that would be nice. That would
hmm
be nice. I know here in the Midwest, we are still getting fallout from the Canadian wildfires. And I
hmm
just pray for the people up there because I can't imagine how much has been
hmm
burning. So, so yes. So hello, Katie Walker and
hmm
Tammy. It's nice to see both of you.
Good afternoon, ladies.
Yes. Hello, hello. All right. Well, if it is your first time joining us, this at Catalyst, our mission is to help take care of people better in food safety and in food in general. And with all the talk about food safety culture, it really ties in because our focus is when people come to food and they have all these fantastic technical skills or they're developing those, how are they also balancing by developing through their leadership and soft skills? And that's where we play because we want you to be a well balanced, holistic leader who can influence and lead in the way that feels authentic to you, but is effective to help protect consumers and to help our organizations. So thank you for joining us today. All right. And because you're here today, then you know that we have our special guest, Kelly Gartner. Kelly comes to us from Bell and Evans and has a wealth of experience and knowledge. And as I just shared earlier, is that Kelly always impresses. And it's whether it's just chatting with her about family or activities, but also even about Bell and Evans and her team and what she does. And on top of that, Kelly, I don't think I've ever heard a negative
Mm.
thing from you. Never. And maybe who knows, but I'm super impressed by that because you always have a positive outlook.
Well, thank you. I can admit that I can be negative, and I have said negative things, but it is part of a purposeful journey of who I am to not stay in that space.
Oh, and see, that totally plays into this, our entire theme here about this lifelong journey of leadership. So, so welcome because we are looking forward to hearing more about this journey. And I'm sure that there's some people like we know, I know we all know Katie knows. You. And there's probably a few other people on that also know you. But there's going to be some people who don't know you or haven't met you yet. Would you even start us off by sharing a little bit about yourself and how did you come to food safety and quality?
Absolutely. And just to touch on what you said earlier, I believe it's all about attitude. And I think we'll get a little bit into that today for sure. But if it's okay with you, I'm gonna do a little bit of a beginning of the story, the end of the story, and then I'll fill in a little bit of the color along the way.
Absolutely. We're going to go with you along the journey.
Awesome. All right. So when thinking about how I started my leadership journey and just my venture into, I'll call it the food world in general, I didn't realize that at the time, while my grandmother was still living, but she was really my greatest mentor and introduction into the food industry. So I grew up in inner city Philadelphia, and agriculture was just far, far, far from anything that was part of my daily life. Not on my radar at all. And at best, we would have visited, say, the countryside, if you will, once a year, and saw farming communities. And, in Pennsylvania, that would be the Lancaster farming community. And during our big venture to Hershey Park every year, and learned about the cows and all of that. And so seriously, agriculture really was not a part of my life. I am a first generation college graduate in my family. And when it was time to go to, decide what my future was, I knew I was going to college, but I knew I didn't want to move far away from home. So I had visited a small agricultural college, less than 2 hours from home, at the time, Delaware Valley College. And, they had a food science program, and I was like, something about it spoke to me, and that was it. That's where I landed. Really having no idea what my future was going to hold for me. But during my childhood, my grandmother, who I mentioned is my mentor, actually was the owner and operator of a small inner city retail store that sold fresh and cooked whole chickens and parts. Yes, very interesting. Mm-hmm. I didn't spend a ton of time there with her, but I knew that was her career, and different from a job. I knew that was her. She owned it, and she lived by that every day. Her store was what was once known throughout the Philadelphia area that sold at the time what we now know as Bell and Evans Chicken. It was crazy. A premium chicken retail outlet. Yes, crazy. So fast forward 30 years later. My grandmother, who since had passed on, I had the opportunity to meet the family ownership of Bell and Evans, and as maybe fate, as they say, would have it, I had the opportunity to become part of their leadership team and now oversee food safety, quality, regulatory, sanitation for Bell and Evans, and it's a fantastic family, fantastic brand to work for. So I very much do believe that. There is a path for all of us, whoever you believe in, God, universe, source, whoever that is for you, that there is a very clear path for you, and a roadmap, if you will, and whichever paths you decide to take will lead you there at the end of the day. So I do believe there was something that led me here. But filling in the middle of that a little bit, when I graduated with my food science degree, my first job out of college was working for Sara Lee Meats. So there was a small further processing facility just outside of Philadelphia. And at the time that I joined that organization, there were two really distinct things going on in the industry. One was USDA was implementing regulatory HACCP, and two, Sara Lee was just coming out on the other side of the Bill Maher Listeria recall.
Big happenings in the industry.
Huge happenings. and both of those have really been very defining for my career. So I joined Sara Lee as a QA technician, and about 2 to 3 months after working there, the plant manager walked up to me and said that, "Hey, I remember you talking about HACCP during your interview. Are you interested in being our HACCP coordinator and to help us implement HACCP?" Being completely afraid and not knowing what I was getting myself into, I just said yes. That really has defined the future for me. I have not left food safety regulatory since then.
Wow, that's amazing. And to think, because it was so new, there weren't nearly the resources and the knowledge that we have today. So to be a new grad and be like, sure, I'll jump in. Brave.
Very brave. I remember spending lots of time at the table with what was my implant inspector at the time, who also really knew nothing about what we were doing. And, kind of hand in hand, we worked together. And so it was a great opportunity for me to build relationships with, not only the plant team and the corporate team, but also with my building that strong USDA relationship as well.
Well, and I love the story because even knowing some of the things that you've been doing, it really talks about kind of this, like how you've really helped develop and contribute and trailblazed in this area as we talk about food safety, especially well in meat. But before we go too far, I have to come back to the story with your grandma because that
Sure.
is so incredible.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, even when you had started at Bell and Evans, did you know that there was this connection with your grandma, or did that kind of come through a little bit later?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I didn't know. So my grandmother became the owner operator, but before she was the owner operator, she worked at this retail location, and the name of the retail location was actually Farmer's Pride. And so when I came to visit the Bell and Evans facility for the first time, I still didn't know the connection. But on the side of the building, there was a brand and the logo, which said Farmer's Pride. And I said, oh my gosh, I very much recognize that. What's the connection? And that day I had the opportunity to sit with Scott Seckler, our owner, and asked him what the connection was. So he had purchased the Bell and Evans brand back in 1984, which is now I know the same year that my grandmother became owner operator of this store.
Okay.
And he had essentially sold off the retail locations as part of the business. He didn't want to continue to operate those and allow the most tenured owners of those locations to have first bid at owning them themselves. And so that was her store.
That's just an incredible story.
Mm-hmm.
And even in there to think about as the family recognized, like we're not going forward, but we want to give others the opportunity to step in and, and have the success and do this for themselves as well.
Yes.
So I have a feeling we're going to hear more about that even in this story as we talk about your leadership journey.
Yes.
That's amazing. Okay. So, along the way, because you've been at Bell and Evans now, how long have you been there?
I'm here a little over 5 years.
5 years. Okay. And so even before that, I'm sure your leadership journey had started even back when you said that, yes, I'll do HACCP, even though, as you said, like we knew little.
Yes.
Is there a theme or is there a story that you feel kind of captures like how you move through leadership?
Give me 1 second. My computer is telling me that it needs to restart, and I have to say, remind me. I apologize.
That's okay. We love when our technology is like
right?
being so helpful.
Okay, sorry about that. We're good.
No, that's okay. But yeah, I'm curious because as you've gone through, like, is there something like, has there been like a North Star or a story that really for you kind of captures like how did you get on this leadership side in this journey? Because just from from us knowing each other and what we've talked about, you highly focus on your people. And I don't mean just, hey, I like my people and yes, they're the greatest asset, like that's the mouthpiece. Like your heart is like your people having success. And I think I see it differently in you than I maybe see in other places. And not that it's good, bad, or right or wrong, just different. And I'm curious how that's come to be.
I think that's a great question. I don't know that I reflect on that a lot. And I would describe myself more as an observer versus a social person. So I do like to observe individuals. I love to observe leaders. I love to observe leaders with titles and leaders without titles. And I would say probably the early part of my career, in living in that food safety quality world, sometimes it can be very lonely. And depending upon where you're at, where you're located, the type of organization that is, there was, for me, my experience was after I had left Sara Lee, I didn't seem to have a network built for myself. And so when I was in a crisis or when I needed support, there was not a lot of places to turn to. And I just started looking outside for that. So I continued to look outside to find other resources that could help me, kind of build that network, if you will, build mentorship for myself. I think that for me has been the biggest leadership journey. And then over the years, kind of seeing different styles, seeing different behaviors of individuals, and say collectively picking them apart over the years and building those of that's a person that I want to be like, or that's a behavior that I would like to have. How do I get there? And then actually being more of an observer and not necessarily the engager, I'll call it, pushed myself to be an engager and engage with individuals and ask them, how did you get there? How did you do that? Is that natural, or did you learn that style? But it's taken me a long time to, I'll call it, be that engager versus getting myself out of my own observer.
But that's really powerful. I mean, even as you share that story, because I mean, right, we sometimes have the stereotype in food safety that we are more introverted and more observers. And so, but as you described, recognizing that, but still intentionally taking action to say, how will I engage with this person differently? And how do I step out of my comfort zone to do this as well? Was that something, even as you started that? I'm curious, because we have a lot of people that come to us and they say, how do I build my network? What would be the advice that you would give someone? Because I think there's always that hesitancy, like, oh my gosh, do they want to talk to me? Oh, they're already so busy. But what is it that would help them kind of take that next step to engage?
I would say take the leap. I generally find that when you engage with folks and ask them about their journey, ask them about their successes, ask them about a particular behavior or an observation that you observe from them, that people are happy to share their experiences with you, even if they're the busiest of people. If I have found very few, honestly, if any, who didn't see the opportunity to pour into somebody else and share and help grow somebody else. Very few, if any, opportunities for that. And so I think it's just a matter of being brave and just starting. Do it once, even if the one time isn't quite the response or reaction that you like. Be brave enough to do it again, and do it again.
That's awesome. And I would completely agree that I don't think I've ever had somebody be like, no, I don't have time. It may be, gosh, right now I have a busy season, but hey, in a month or in a few weeks, can we connect again? And so just staying on that.
Yes, I agree. It may not be at that moment in time that maybe meets your schedule, but even if it's an offer to say, hey, and can I get on your calendar in the next 30 or 60 days?
Sometimes that's the first step.
Yes.
So you've talked about your leadership style with observing and then kind of working into engaging. And I'm sure there's many more, there's more dimensions of how you lead within that. But I'm curious, if you had to look at your leadership style kind of holistically, how would you describe your approach?
That's a good question. I think I reflect back on my experiences and what I did or I didn't have available to me. And I just want, my approach would be that I want to provide for others what may not have been available for me. And so again, looking around and saying, I just don't have that person. It's not that there's not other leaders in the organization, but being able to maybe kind of go talk the QA speak to somebody else in the organization that understands it the same way that I do. Finding mentors either around the organization or outside of the organization. That really has been what was introduced to me, and really what I continue to, I think, mentor for other individuals is surround yourself with people. What's the saying about think about the 5 people that you spend the most time with? That's going to define what the next 3 to 5 years of your life look like.
And sometimes that's really like, you're like, wow. And then other times you're like, whoa. So I
Mhm.
love that. When you think about, yes, who is in this inner circle that's engaging you, supporting you, influencing you. That's a
Mhm.
really powerful way of thinking about, because that energy is all around you.
It is. It is for sure.
So already several times you've talked about where you've reflected on something to be able to help maybe discern or ascertain kind of like what's next. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about that, because we know as leaders that one of the most powerful things we can have is self
Mhm.
awareness.
Yes.
And there's research out there. There's a famous researcher who does research on self awareness. And she said 95% of people will raise their hand and go, yes, I'm very self aware. When in actuality, through her assessments, only really like 5 to 10% of people really are. So I'm curious, as you talk about reflecting, like how has that perhaps influenced or impacted you
Mhm.
as a person and as a leader? And how did you start this practice?
I think one huge opportunity for me was in a prior organization. I had the opportunity to become part of an internal mentorship program, kind of like a leadership development program. And the big influence there was an individual who their mentor was John Maxwell. If you're familiar with the leadership guru of John Maxwell, and I saw that as an opportunity for myself to just continue to learn the see the principles of leadership and really continue to just want to know them and grow them for myself. And I would say a few things that really stuck with me would be, um, thinking about when you're in the middle of an event or a crisis, or you're really struggling with another individual, before you're placing blame on them and saying that it's their fault. Use the mirror exercise first. How are you showing up? What's your attitude? You know, it's never a one-way street.
Mhm.
We always bring, we're always bringing ourselves to the conversation. And if you really practiced, looking in the mirror and talking to that individual the way that you did, and what would you reflect back upon yourself? So I think that's one like very foundational principle that I have learned. And look, that doesn't mean I don't have bad days. That doesn't mean that I don't say things that I shouldn't, or have thoughts that I shouldn't. But I think that there's a lot of self-reflection that I do in how can I approach that person differently, or how can I even have a conversation to say that that individual, how you showed up to that conversation, my perception was this. What was your perception?
I love that. And I think that's also a telltale sign of a great leader, because a lot of us can recognize, oh, yeah, I have those days, but to go, I still come back and I still work on this practice,
We
because it
have
is
to.
practice, practice, practice.
It is. It is all practice, right? We have to. You know, we have to continue to work with individuals. We spend more time with these individuals sometimes than we do with our own family. And at the end of the day, I don't need to necessarily be best friends with somebody, but I need to have a very, very clear professional relationship. So that way we can, we need to move the business forward.
Hmm. And even as humans, like we always talk about, like the neural pathways we have up here, I always say they're like the Grand Canyon. When we have that first spark of a thought that comes through, it's going to run down that Grand Canyon pathway
Mhm.
of whatever has been part of our normal habit
Mhm.
behavior. And
Yes.
so that practice is so important, so that we can start trickling the water down this other path to go, oh, how have I contributed? What did I say? How did I show up?
Yes.
Otherwise, it does. And as humans, we also have the protection mechanism on. So we do want to blame because we're protecting ourselves. And
Mhm.
that is just a common humanity
Yes.
characteristic we have. So it's not that it's a flaw, it's just normal.
It's the
So
ego.
our ego, yeah.
It
Hello,
is the
ego.
ego. Mhm.
Welcome. But I think that's fantastic advice, because I think, well, and I'm certainly guilty of this earlier in my career, where I was like, well, why can't they do it this way? Or why do they keep
Mhm.
trying this? And instead it was like, whoa, I never even stopped to pause and think, like this young whippersnapper who thought they knew so much really knew so little.
I was her too. Yes. And I still am, right? I still,
At moments.
at moments. Yes.
Yes, very much so. Oh gosh. So I imagine, so even as you've been on this leadership journey, I know that you are always bringing people along with you, which is something that we talk about is so important because as leaders, if we can connect better with others, if we can help, focus on their well-being, their development, their impact, their influence, all of those are great things that we can do to help others, but we also need to help them develop these skills to come into their own leadership style and kind of carry that forward. And I think earlier you had shared a couple questions that you even used to kind of help guide in that area. Is that something that you want to share?
Did I share that earlier with you?
A little bit.
Okay.
Do these sound familiar?
Oh, yes, yes.
It was, what are you doing to know yourself? What are you doing to grow yourself? And who are you surrounding yourself with?
Yes. Great questions. I love them.
Well, and you're the one who made those questions.
I did. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes. And I borrowed them from one of my mentors. So yeah, I'm happy to go through those. So if I start with, what are you doing to know yourself? Like I said, I think the path is recognizing you have to look at yourself in every situation and ask yourself how you're showing up and how you're contributing to it, and holding yourself accountable before you assess or place blame on others, which is not easy to do. It's always easy to say it's somebody else's fault. But I think that there's other methods too, outside of just showing up and asking yourself, because like you just mentioned, right, your limiting beliefs or your ego will always tell you that you're right. Right? Always tell you that you're right and somebody else is wrong. But I think that there are some tools that are really great. Some behavioral assessment tools that are really awesome to maybe help teach you or maybe show you a little bit more about who you are personally. So one of my go-tos would be the DISC behavioral assessment tool. There's various versions of that tool out there that can help give you a little bit more insight about your different behavioral tendencies. And it's my recommendation with something like those is always to do them with somebody who's either certified or very experienced in them, because you could take those and again, the ego will allow you to pick out those, that makes me right, and that makes me right, and that makes me right. And you don't see the things where you have opportunity to grow. And so when you're doing that, I think the opportunity is to do that with somebody that can help facilitate, these are your strengths, but these are also some things that you should be aware of when you engage with personalities that are very different from you.
Yes. I think that's always great advice, because they also have the experience of looking at those with other people and to see, sometimes we always have our blind spots because once again, the ego, but some of those things that we don't even know that we don't know. And if they can help bring those to light, that helps us see an area of ourselves that we didn't even recognize was there.
Yes. One, I brought some books along with me. One very simple, very accessible one is called The 8 Dimensions of Leadership. So this is a DISC-like book, easily accessible. Take a little online assessment, and it's kind of a self read through to give you a little bit of insight about yourself before you were to jump into, say, maybe the more robust DISC type of program.
Oh yeah, but all little nuggets. Right? Because we can only learn about ourselves in like bite sizes too.
Oh, yes.
So having nuggets to be able to go and maybe access it online and hey, what pops up? So.
Yes. Yeah. It's an introduction. It's an introduction to learn a little bit more about yourself.
Nice. All right. So then you had, what are you doing to grow yourself?
Great question too. The grow yourself thing would be, for me personally, engaging with a mentor, a coach, others, surrounding myself with that group of individuals who just have different skills and different strengths and different beliefs than I do. I very, very much believe in mentorship and coaching programs, and would have committed to myself that I will always have a coach, that I have never arrive. And those coaches might change over time depending upon what season of my life that I'm in or what season of my career I'm in. But I very much believe in having that person that's going to always challenge you to what are you working on right now and how are you improving yourself?
Mm. I'm like, and we are such a surprise even to ourselves at time, aren't we? I don't know
Yes.
about you, but even when I think, oh my gosh, I know this about myself, it doesn't mean that I don't, but I'm always amazed that all of a sudden, like something bubbles up and I'm like, whoa, I
Mhm.
didn't even know that was really there, or I never looked at it from that perspective.
Yes.
And yet, but we have people around us all the time that may have seen that or may have
Mhm.
experienced something different. And so when we have that moment, it's so powerful to have this
Yes.
gift to go, wow, now I have something new.
Exactly.
I love
And
that.
I think it plays into the next question is who are you surrounding yourself with, which is that same answer is those individuals who are different than you, have different beliefs than you. I think it's important to identify strengths in others and ask yourself, is that something that I don't have today, but what's the opportunity for me to adopt that? Like the disc profile really focuses on what your natural strengths are and what your adopted or adapted strengths are. Just because that's not naturally you doesn't mean that you can't learn how to kind of bring that into yourself. And when circumstances require it, you're not going to be that all the time, but when circumstances require it, you can pivot and exist in that space for a period of time. And I think that a coach will definitely help you. And you're exactly right. Surprise yourself.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's more tools in your box because sometimes when we think, well, this is just how I am, which is really powerful to know that core, but yet we are humans naturally are chameleons as well if we allow ourselves to be. And it doesn't mean that we change that we're a chameleon. It just means, ooh, I can play over here, or I can show up like this, and I can leverage this tool. And I think sometimes when we, just as we go through life, sometimes we wonder, like, should I be changing for that? Or somebody said I should change. And, do we hang on to that? Or do we go, gosh, what part of that is something that I can use in this more positive light or to help have better influence or impact or lift others up? Doesn't mean that I'm an introvert, but I can be extroverted.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a tool that I've learned to use because I know it can also, in times, help people feel more comfortable and it can help engage people. And that's a really important skill to have as a food safety leader. Granted, you're going to find me at
Yes.
times where I'm going to be over here and I'm going to be like, I'm just in my book.
Mm-hmm. I resemble that. Yes, very much.
That resonates a little bit.
Oh, yes, yes.
And I think those are really important to think about who we are. And even here at Catalyst, we have our technical leadership mindset principles. It's a mouthful. But the first one is like, how do I see myself?
Mm-hmm.
Because we too believe that in order to be effectively communicating and leading and influencing others, if we're not connected here with how we're showing up and how we're impacting and contributing, it's really hard to be on the same page with others. And it doesn't always mean agreement, just with
Yeah.
effective relationships. And you've mentioned that a few times.
Agreed. I very much agreed. Is if you're not recognizing how you show up with others, and again, you're always placing the blame on somebody else. Will you be an effective leader? Will you continue to rise in leadership? Will you be successful? Yes. Will it be sustained? Probably not.
No. Well, so, and you talk a lot about like, right, we've been talking a lot about like, how do we have more awareness? How do we learn about ourselves and keep growing? How do you do this for others? How do you encourage even like your team or people, whether it's your direct reports or even others? Because I know that you don't stop at just your direct reports. How do
Yes.
you encourage and support them to lean into maybe these three questions in different ways?
Mm-hmm. I would say in general, just by being a good role model, and being honest, being honest that not every day is a good day. And even if, some you're having a bad day of being your best about being honest that, that was not my best performance today. And, just really reminding everybody at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what your title is. We are all humans and we all make mistakes. How can I reflect on those and do better tomorrow, be better tomorrow? But I think the other thing is just engaging with different individuals across the organization. And, sometimes it's just a conversation and how you doing? That maybe no one else did that to them today. There are a lot of independent contributors across our organization, and they don't always have a network. They're not the folks that get invited to meetings or are in, kind of the larger groups. And so how do you just engage with them at some of those to start the conversation?
That's culture.
Mm-hmm. Sure is.
There's so much talk about food safety culture, which we know is really culture.
Yes.
But how, once again, I use the word powerful a lot, so I need to come up with a better adjective. But right, we all like to be able to engage someone, because if they are an individual contributor or maybe not as involved, like we all still want to be recognized, that human to human connection. And I think that says a lot about the culture to see that that's an opportunity, but then also to act on that opportunity.
Yes.
Because, with culture, we always say, obviously, I think logically we all know this. If we keep doing the same thing we're doing today, even if we feel like we're like moving forward or doing different things, if it's not meaningful action and making meaningful steps and impact, like we're still going to be here. It'll just feel like we've done all kinds of work. We call it the rocking chair syndrome.
I like that.
Right? Like we're moving, but going nowhere. And so, but things like changing conversations and engaging people who aren't normally maybe invited into that, those are the things that help the rocking chair move forward.
Agreed.
Yes. And of course, I'm always intrigued when we talk about culture, because one of the things that I've shared already with the audience is that I've always been impressed about when you talk about Bell and Evans, and they're wildly innovative and how they look at investments for like long-term versus the short term. And I'm curious if you can tell us and share a little bit with us about like what you've noticed, because I'm not sure, is it the family owned, is it, private owned versus maybe public, or size? Like, what are some of the things that you've noticed about Bell and Evans that makes this culture unique and this and their willingness to invest?
Well, I've had the opportunity to work for both public and private family-owned organizations. I would say as I entered into the family-owned, that really has been my more desired space to operate in. And I would say it for me anyway, it's a culture. There's superior cultures in both of those segments. But what I have found, I'll say more so, and even more so at Bell and Evans, would be we're a small but mighty team. We're a fairly flat organization, and the leadership team, the family ownership team, is just incredibly accessible. And so I would say, it doesn't really matter what position you're in within the organization, is that you have ability to engage, and you have the ability to ask questions, and you have the ability to understand what the direction is and where we're going. And I think when you have that level of engagement with your teams, it makes everyone excited about what's the next project. Certainly we all have our daily tasks and activities, and at the end of the day, it's production, and you're getting those, you're getting product out the door. But when individuals can see that there's a next project, that there's something exciting, that there's new business opportunities ahead of us, and that there's just continued growth, that defines culture in a very different way.
So, big question: has it always been like this? Like the 5 years you've been there? Was this part of what you noticed when you came, or is this something that's even shifted over the past 5 years?
It for sure has been here. And I would say it is part of just the way that the family leadership operates. It's who they are. But I would say that it has certainly continued to improve, because it's very easy as you grow as an organization to lose that, or to lose sight of culture and, just see the growth, see profitability. And I would say very deliberate from from a family ownership and leadership standpoint to make sure that we remain connected with the entirety of our Bell and Evans team community. Providing opportunities for information, for updates, for where we're going. And I think that those are things that are really key to, again, it comes back to engagement, the engagement of your team members, and that they're a part of the business, not just a part of their little piece of the world.
I know yesterday when we were doing our prep call, and we kind of talked a little bit about this, and it really is something that connected with me, because when I had been in chicken, we have our chicken world in common. I had been with Golden Plump, and they've since been purchased. But one of the things that I can look back on and see much more clearly now that I'm out of there versus when I was there is the impact of the family ownership, and how being in a business where they were focused, it wasn't always ROI. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't, is this a smart investment? That question always came up.
Yes.
But in other organizations I've been at, like, ROIs were very clear. Like, if it's not this within this time period, we will not invest. And that's part of what gave me the ability to look backwards, hindsight's 2020, and be like, wow, it was so unique to see an organization that was focused on kind of the longer term, like generationally, what are we doing to maintain this business and keep it in this culture and keep forward investing versus worrying always about just like the end of the year return or next quarter's profit line. And I think that's, like you said, there are good cultures in all different places. So it's not a family owned. I'm not trying to imply that, but it did definitely give me pause to see that there was a different element. And I don't know if it was the family owned or how, but that approach, seeing that in different companies is part of that culture that we're all, I think, kind of looking to say, how do we help people see that, especially in food safety? Like, our investments aren't going to be, 6 weeks later, but they are part of enabling growth for that longer term picture that we all want.
Yes.
So along that lines, a lot of we get questions all the time. Like, how do you know the company culture, like, before you start? And then the question of, like, what do you do when you get in and it's not what you thought or hoped it would be? Any advice or insights on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I think I was reflecting a little bit on our prep questions yesterday, and a little bit we touched on that. And I've certainly, participated in a lot of interviews in my years. And I would say I do see a shift in how candidates are interviewing with organizations. And again, this is, my experience here, where there's more of a shift of, as a company trying to hire somebody, I'm in the driver's seat and I'm making the selection if you were the right candidate for us. So I would say that I have seen a shift where candidates are way more engaged in asking more cultural questions and trying to get to, I saw your mission statement, I saw your vision statement, I looked at your website, I did my research, but tell me truly, what's it like to work here? Tell me what the environment is like. And it's really hard to gauge and judge that from an interview process. So, I think if candidates aren't doing that when they're going for an interview, I would highly encourage it. Right? I like to say that an interview is definitely a two-way process. You should be interviewing the organization just as much as they're interviewing you for a role. But at the end of the day, once you're there, if you determine that that's the right place for you, if you find that it's not really what you were told or what you understood it to be, I think that when I was preparing for this, I was thinking about the question of, what is needed differently from a FSQA team member nowadays. And I think I wrote down that FSQA leadership is a measure of science, negotiation skills, and grit. And you need a little
and grit. Okay.
And you need a little bit of all of those to really be successful in a leadership role. But at the end of the day, if you're bringing the issues to the table and you're bringing solutions to the table, and an organization just is not moving forward with those things, I do believe that you have to make some tough decisions to say, maybe I'm just not right for this organization. Maybe it's not, maybe my value isn't being recognized here. And I truly believe that there are plentiful of organizations where you're the right fit for that organization. And so don't be afraid to say, I made it, this wasn't right. And it's time for me to move on to the next one.
Oh, yeah. That is true. Because I think sometimes we feel like, well, we have to stay here. Like we haven't had the impact, or this is like, I'm committed. And I think because we're often so passionate about like helping have that improvement and helping move forward, that we sometimes forget that we can give ourselves permission to say, maybe there's something better that's a better fit for us.
Yes, agreed.
And it's certainly a balance, because I think we're often planting lots of seeds as well. And sometimes the seed is, it's like peas. They'll be up in 7 days. And sometimes it's something else. It's going to be 2 weeks before I see the plant.
Or longer, honestly, or longer. And that's just it, that is you're spot on with that. We talk a lot about here with my team about, planting seeds and sometimes we forget we planted a seed, and then all of a sudden we'll come back and like, wow, did you see that? Did you see what we just harvested? And we'll reflect upon it and say, yeah, we were purposeful about that. And maybe it took a little bit longer than we thought it would, but here we are reaping the reward of it.
Oh, I love it. So when you think about, you said, so what's important is the science, negotiation, and grit.
Mm-hmm.
How do we best support like the next gen? And I'm not even gonna say next gen, because even like right? Everybody, we're all in this space of either gaining these skills, learning them, leaning into them, improving on them. What would be your advice for people to kind of lean into some of those a little bit more?
Let's see, leaning in. I like to use one example. I like to use here for a young, or I'll say inexperienced leader, maybe that doesn't have or comes into a crisis situation or a very difficult decision-making situation. Tools, right? Just equip yourself with tools that can help you be successful and navigate those things. And again, a lot of this is finding different mentors or coaches or people of how do you navigate. It doesn't matter what kind of business decision it is, right? How do you navigate those difficult business decisions? One tool that I like to recommend is I'll call it like a risk matrix or a risk assessment matrix. Is a fantastic tool. If anybody is involved in HACCP or food safety risk assessments, you should be very familiar with that tool. But that tool can be used in a very versatile ways to take something that may be a little bit more subjective and make it a little bit more objective in terms of, what's the type of incident, what's the type of hazard, or what's the type of situation that we're in the middle of right now. And what's the potential severity depending on the decision making we do around that. So it helps to bring others into the conversation instead of it being just my opinion or, my expertise, or maybe somebody suggests my lack of expertise in that area, that we can have some strong conversation around it and come to a good decision making point.
I like that. Sometimes I think the best things we can do are ask bigger and better questions.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Which maybe is part of what Katie's got here for us. So Thank you, Katie, for the comment here. And of course, we love being with you as well. And you are very wise. But your question is really, you said, I'm curious to know how you're applying your leadership in communicating and managing the proposed salmonella framework to your food safety quality teams, as well as ops and live ops. And we know, and she says, there is so much unknown, but it will undoubtedly drive change in our operations. So how do you even approach that subject pending, and the end got a little cut off, but I imagine pending some of these like official, I think it was official, perhaps, direction, guidelines, regulations that may be coming?
Yes. That's a great question. Thanks, Katie. I would say, for what I have learned throughout the entirety of my career, again, starting in that regulatory space as USDA implemented what I call regulatory HACCP, and having lived here 5+ years in the regulatory world of taking things like that Salmonella Framework Initiative and bringing it back to my organization and saying, we have an opportunity here to engage and be a part of this and contribute to the conversation, or we can simply sit back and wait for our regulatory authorities to make decisions and impose additional regulatory requirements on us. And so we do a lot of work, and it's just who we are as an innovative organization. So we do a lot of work in saying, how can we contribute to the conversation? And not, if there's an opportunity for us to impact that as an industry, but how can we make sure that we're taking it internally at a minimum and assessing our process in such a way that's going to deliver us the results that we're going to be successful. And, at the end of the day, salmonella is a public health issue. Certainly we want to be mindful of the impact of a salmonella issue or a salmonella outbreak. But we also understand that there are certain limitations in how you manage that within your process. And so as long as we're always moving forward to the very best that we can do to manage it, but also contribute to the greater good, that's really where we stand as an organization.
And it sounds a lot like some of the things that we've talked about, where you've talked about, like, even as an organization with these type of perhaps situations or what's pending is like, how well do we know ourselves? How are we growing ourselves? Mm-hmm. Who are we surrounding ourselves with so mm-hmm. that we can all kind of move together and still keep our eye on public health as well. Well, not as well, but keep our eye on public health. Because that's our role, right? In food safety is how do we protect consumers so that we don't want anybody to become sick, but we also are looking at how do we support our organizations in where we are today and where perhaps others are looking for us to go. So,
yes.
Okay. We've covered a lot of different areas today. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you're like, oh, I was thinking we would get to this, but we just haven't yet?
I don't think so. We talked a lot about just who you surround yourself with. Again, I'm not a part of the Catalyst group. We're Jill, what yourself and Tia do, I think, are fantastic. Is a need for folks. I wish I would have had both of you when I was a young entry-level person in the industry. I think there would have been maybe some different pathways for myself, or maybe moved forward a little bit faster. But I just think the overall message is just take the step forward, engage with individuals, find different mentors. I think from a mentorship standpoint, that don't always think that person has to be somebody physically in front of you. There are opportunities for mentorships of people that you may never meet. Mm-hmm. I do listen to a lot of podcasts. I have a lot of, I'll call them mentors that are truly individuals that I have never met in person, but yet I maybe follow them via books or podcasts or different other communication methods. And they just kind of influence and pour into my life in ways differently than somebody in front of me would.
Mm-hmm. Love that. And if you have any that you would recommend, of course, we can always drop those in the link too later. So
I will send you some to drop into the link.
Because it's always fun to see like what's somebody else listening to, because there's just so many. So to be able to screen them, but to have somebody be like, this is a good one.
All yes. Right. And they change. For me, they change. So sure. I have some great ones that I'll share with you.
Awesome. All right. I do have one last question, because I think when we think of being in leadership in food safety and quality anywhere in food, that we know we sometimes get stereotyped with firefighting and like this work-life balance thing isn't great. But that's not always true. But I'm always curious, because as a leader, one of the things is also self-care. However that defines for you. So I'm curious, because people often ask, like, how do you as a leader, how do you take care of you? Like what helps so that you get to have the best version of you here, like with us today and other days for your teams?
Oh, that's a great question, and one that I have learned a difficult lesson over many years. I believe that life is very much an ebb and flow, and I hear work-life balance all the time. And if I don't believe that there's I can agree that this percentage is work and this percentage is life. I very much believe there are times at home that requires more of me, and there's times at work that requires more of me. And for me, over many years, I have learned boundaries and saying, again, nothing is perfect, but when I feel myself kind of rubbing up against, say I've been just spending a little bit too much time at work, that I have to be very deliberate of saying it's time for me to, is there somebody else I can delegate something to? Is this all on me? How am I dispersing those responsibilities so that I can, I don't want to say trade off, but really be very deliberate about spending a little bit more time at home.
Oh, I love that. Because I think sometimes we feel like we're, I don't want to say chained to work, because that gives a negative connotation, but we're once again, so passionate about what we're doing, we don't want to step away.
Yes.
But I love for us to be here and present and to do the best we can. Sometimes those boundaries do help.
Mm-hmm.
And finding maybe alternative solutions, like you said, like who else can maybe step in here? Who's ready for this opportunity, so that you can come over here and do some of the things that fill your cup back up, so that you're ready to come back. That's awesome.
And that's really difficult to do. It is very difficult because, I am very passionate. I love what I do. And it's very easy for me to just say, oh, no, I'm going to be here in the middle of it. And it's very hard to hand off to somebody who, but it is about trust. And I very much believe in borrowed belief. A lot of people believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, and gave me those opportunities. And I think it's really important for me as a leader to be able to hand those to others, so that they have the opportunity themselves to grow.
Wonderful. That's a great place for us to even wrap up today. So
awesome.
Oh, Kelly, thank you for being on with us today and sharing these nuggets of insights and wisdom, because once again, I love being able to share stories where we do get to step into leadership, and we do get to really inspire and bring others with us. And there are hard times that it's hard, but it's this bigger picture of how do we create opportunities and space, and like helping take care of our teams. And that's really through helping us know ourselves and helping us grow ourselves and knowing who we're surrounding ourselves with. So thank you for sharing all of that with us.
Thank you. Very much appreciate you having me, and perfect ending. Thank you.
It is. All right. Well, and thank you to the audience for being here as well. We hope you've enjoyed this, and of course, comment for things that resonated with you, or things you'd like to know more about. Because of course, we are going to be here same time, same place next week, actually, because it's a holiday week here in the US. We are going to have one of our fantastic replays for you. But of course, we'll be back the week after with another live show. And we're always looking at what topics you're interested in, so that as we are building out our guests and our schedule, that we are resonating and connecting and having impact for you. So thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time. All right. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.